Donald Trump spent the better part of 16 months trying to get rid of Jerome Powell. He called him a fool. He called him a real dummy. He said Powell was costing the country a fortune and that his termination could not come fast enough. He sent the Department of Justice after him with criminal subpoenas. He tried to fire him. He tried to appoint his replacement before Powell's term was even over. He did everything a president can do to crush the independence of the central bank and bend it to his will. And Jerome Powell, in the final weeks of his chairmanship, found a way to trap him, not with a lawsuit, not with a speech, with a decision so simple and so legally airtight that Trump's own team could not undo it. Powell announced he was not leaving the Federal Reserve. He was staying on the Board of Governors as a voting member of the rate-setting committee until January 2028. And in doing so, he denied Trump the one thing the president needed most, a Fed he fully controls. This is the full story of how Powell's decision to stay has created a situation Trump cannot easily escape, what it means for interest rates, inflation, and every American's financial life, and why the legal and institutional dimensions of this standoff have implications that go beyond one man's job title. Start with the mechanics of the trap, because this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating from a constitutional and institutional standpoint. The Federal Reserve's rate-setting body, the Federal Open Market Committee, includes 7 members of the Board of Governors, plus rotating regional bank presidents. The Board of Governors has 7 seats, each carrying a 14-year term, staggered so that no single president can easily pack the board with political loyalists. When Jerome Powell's 4-year term as chair ended on May 15th, his separate 14-year term as a governor did not end. Most outgoing chairs leave voluntarily. Powell chose not to. By staying, Powell created a structural problem for Trump that goes beyond one vote on the committee. When Kevin Warsh was confirmed as the new chair, he needed to be assigned to a board seat. Because Powell was still occupying his own seat, Warsh had to be assigned to a different seat, specifically the seat temporarily held by Stephen Miron, whose term had already expired. That means Trump lost a seat. He lost an open appointment that he would have had if Powell had walked out the door on May 15, as most outgoing chairs do. The Hill's Ian Katz described the situation bluntly. Powell's decision to stay is denying Trump a majority on the Board of Governors for now. Trump has 2 confirmed allies on the 7-member board, Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman. Warsh, as the new chair, is the 3rd. With Powell still seated and 2 other members not aligned with Trump's rate-cutting agenda, the majority Trump expected to wield in the Fed boardroom has not materialized. He went through 16 months of pressure, criminal subpoenas, public insults, and constitutional battles over Fed independence, and he still does not control the institution he was trying to control. Now here is the economic context that makes this politically explosive for Trump. Trump's core demand of the Federal Reserve has been simple and consistent throughout his second term: cut interest rates. He wanted lower rates because lower rates stimulate the economy, make borrowing cheaper for businesses and homeowners, lift stock prices, and create the conditions of economic warmth that benefit incumbents politically. He wanted them fast enough to be felt before the November midterms. He has said publicly that rates should be much lower. He has said Powell was wrong, too slow, too stubborn, and too political. He has said the economy could be transformed by rate cuts if only the Fed would comply. The problem is that the economic conditions do not support rate cuts. They support the opposite. Consumer price inflation is at 3.8%, the highest level in 3 years. Producer prices are running at 6% annually. The Iran war has pushed gas prices above $4.50 per gallon nationally. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Energy costs are filtering through the entire supply chain and lifting prices on everything from groceries to manufacturing inputs to transportation. The Federal Reserve's mandate is to keep inflation under control. In this environment, cutting rates would risk accelerating the inflation that is already the #1 concern of American voters. Bank of America analysts predicted the Fed will hold rates steady until the second half of 2027. Investors see the probability of a rate change at any of this year's 5 remaining meetings as below 40%. Christopher Hodge, chief United States economist at Naxos CIB, told CNN that Warsh is in the unfortunate position, through no fault of his own, to probably be the least influential Fed chair in a long time. He said Warsh will have a genuinely hard time convincing the other members of the rate-setting committee to cut rates quickly because the economic data does not support doing so. And sitting at that rate-setting table as a full voting member with a term running to January 2028 is Jerome Powell. Trump's allies have been furious about Powell's decision to stay. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Senate Banking Committee Chair Tim Scott both publicly criticized Powell for remaining on the board, calling it a break with decades of precedent. That criticism is accurate in the narrow sense that most outgoing chairs do leave voluntarily. But, as Ian Katz noted in the Hill's analysis, the Trump administration's attacks on Fed independence, including an attempt to fire Governor Lisa Cook and the DOJ investigation of Powell, were also unprecedented. Powell chose to stay precisely because the attacks were unprecedented. He said it directly at his final press conference as chair. He said, "I had long planned to be retiring. The things that have happened in the last 3 months have left me no choice but to stay until I see them through." That statement is not passive. It is an explicit declaration that Trump's pressure campaign is the reason Powell is not leaving. Trump attacked the institution. The institution is now responding by ensuring that the man Trump most wanted gone remains present, with a vote, for nearly 2 more years. The legal context reinforces Powell's position. The Supreme Court, in its shadow docket ruling in Trump versus Wilcox, carved out a specific exception for the Federal Reserve when it otherwise expanded presidential authority to remove members of independent administrative bodies. The majority wrote that it was protecting the Fed from presidential removal pressure. Justice Kagan noted approvingly that the court said it did not doubt the majority's intention to avoid imperiling the Fed. The Supreme Court has now formally drawn a line protecting Federal Reserve governors from presidential removal for policy disagreements. Powell is behind that line. He has a vote, he has a term, and Trump cannot legally force him out. The DOJ criminal investigation that triggered Powell's decision to stay has been officially dropped. United States Attorney Jeanine Pirro filed the subpoenas. A court quashed them. Pirro said she may appeal. But the investigation being dropped is the reason Kevin Warsh could be confirmed at all. Republican Senator Tom Tillis refused to vote for Warsh until the DOJ dropped its investigation into Powell, saying he would only confirm Warsh once the bogus investigation that threatened Fed independence was ended. The investigation was dropped. Warsh was confirmed, but Powell stayed anyway because the investigation being dropped does not erase the fact that it happened, and he said he intends to remain until the situation is resolved with what he called transparency and finality, including any potential appeal by Pirro. The Federal Reserve's April meeting, Powell's last as chair, offered a preview of what Warsh is walking into. The committee voted 8-4 to hold rates steady, the highest level of dissent in more than 3 decades. 3 of the 4 dissenters were not objecting to holding rates. They were objecting to language in the policy statement that signaled the Fed still had a bias toward eventual rate cuts. Those 3 officials wanted to remove even the hint that cuts were coming because they believed the inflation risk from the Iran war is severe enough that the next move may need to be a raise rather than a cut. If that minority position gains votes over the coming months, Warsh could face his first FOMC meeting in June as chair, presiding over a committee that is actively moving away from rate cuts and toward rate hikes. Rate hikes in this environment would be the worst possible political outcome for Trump. They would raise mortgage rates further. They would increase the cost of business borrowing. They would likely cause a stock market sell-off. And they would happen at a new Fed led by Trump's own hand-picked successor on a committee that includes Powell as a voting member, all of it driven by the inflation that Trump's Iran war created. This is the trap in its full shape. Trump wanted a Fed that would cut rates and make the economy feel good before November. Instead, he has a Fed where his own chair cannot build consensus for cuts because the data does not support them, where his predecessor sits at the table with a vote and a mandate running to 2028, where the Supreme Court has explicitly protected the institution from presidential pressure, and where the committee is divided in a direction that points toward hikes rather than cuts. Frontline's documentary, The President versus the Fed, which aired on PBS in mid-May, captured the arc of this confrontation in detail. Peter Conti Brown, a leading Fed historian, told Frontline that Powell's real testing moments were during the COVID pandemic and during the Trump administration's all-out assault on central bank independence. He said Powell's place in history is secure on the basis of either one. Bloomberg's in-depth profile of Powell, published this week, described the moment when the DOJ served criminal subpoenas to the Federal Reserve as the moment that flipped Powell from cautious institutional patience into full resistance mode. For years, Powell had refrained from confronting Trump directly, worried that visible conflict would undermine the Fed's public mission. The subpoenas ended that calculus. He recorded a video and released it directly to the public. He said the criminal threat was a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on its best assessment of the public good, rather than following the preferences of the president. He named what was happening. He went to court. He won. And then he stayed. Trump spent 16 months trying to remove the obstacle. The obstacle stayed, and it will continue to vote on interest rates, to speak at committee meetings, to serve as a visible institutional reminder that the Federal Reserve survived the pressure campaign every month until January 2028, in a building that Trump investigated, subpoenaed, insulted, and failed to control. That is what the trap looks like. Not a lawsuit, not a speech, a man who decided not to leave, exercising a right that was always his, in an institution that the Supreme Court explicitly protected for the 2 years that matter most to the president who wanted him gone.